All right, I got two quick questions. One about
Yeah.
politics. I'll start with that, and then one about women. I'm a big MAGA guy, big Trump guy, but there's been a lot of stuff opened my eyes recently. When he did the anti-Semitism thing, like I talked about, I didn't really like that. Also with Real ID brought by the Patriot Act in 2005, just like that he's going to implement
And
that.
you know who co-wrote the Patriot Act, right?
I do not.
It was a guy named Mike Chertoff.
Gotcha.
Which which dual citizen.
Yeah.
So
well, what do you like?
Go ahead.
Do you think Trump, in a sense, is more bought than he was in the first term?
100%. 100%. I mean, back in 2015, he was making fun of Marco Rubio for taking money from the Adelsons.
Yeah.
This time around, he took $100 million from her on this last go around by himself, right? That's just off for her. She gave him $100 million. I think in total he's received something like $200 or $300 million from the Adelsons or from the Zionist lobby. So, yeah, man. I mean, the reality is when you get large sums of money like that, your policy is going to be, kind of curtailed to what they want. And for her, she's a hardcore Zionist, and she's obviously very interested in preserving Israel against its enemies. So he's going to have a very pro-Israel policy because they've given him quite a bit of money. And I always tell people, if you want to see what a president's policy is going to be, don't necessarily listen to what he says during his campaigns or when he's, on the campaign trail. Look at who's giving him money. That's going to tell you, and look at what their interests are, right? Elon Musk, Myron Adelson, some of his biggest donators. What's he doing? Pushing for deregulation, and he's H-1B visas, and he's trying to help out Israel as much as possible. The people that donate the money dictate the rules, unfortunately. I wish it wasn't that way. I think it's problematic. I'm sorry? I think he's better than Kamala. I think it was, we're kind of in a situation where we would have just got another 4 years of Biden if Kamala got in. But I do think that with Trump, at least, he'll be able to at least control Netanyahu to a degree, and he at least talks with Russia versus the Biden administration didn't talk to Putin for years, which is crazy to me. So, there's always going to be negatives and pluses. Like, no president is ever going to make you say, oh, yes, everything he does is awesome. Like, I look at it like if 50% of the stuff they do is good, that's good enough. I'm very pragmatic in that sense. But, yeah, man, I mean, if you look at the donors will tell you what his policy is going to be. And we know Elon Musk and Myron Adelson are some of the top ones. So Israel and tech and AI are going to be huge.
What about some of the conservative media that's more pro-Israel? I know you've talked to Nick Fuentes. I listen to more of his stuff now that my eyes have gotten open to this.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on him and Candace Owens kind of getting banned by Turning Point and the Daily Wire and stuff like that? Do you think the Daily Wire and Turning Point
they're
really
scared of
saying
discourse.
the truth,
They're scared of discourse. The reality is simply this. Support of Israel is an indefensible position. I was streaming the other day and I showed a clip from President Nixon where he was asked in an interview back in the 90s, in 1992, hey, why do we support Israel? In your book, you admitted that there's not really much strategic value in supporting Israel. And he basically said, for moral reasons, right? And I was like, oh, moral reasons. You mean more like blackmail and the fact that they own our politicians. But that's kind of what it comes down to. There is no strategic benefit to supporting Israel. So people like Ben Shapiro, Charlie Kirk, et cetera, these hardcore Zionists, they don't want to have that discussion because it's really an indefensible position. There's no reason why we support Israel the way that we do. They've created more problems for us than good. I think anyone with eyes can see that. The Iraq War, all of our wars in the Middle East in general, it's been because of Israel. That's why those guys were dancing, because they knew when those towers were on fire that we were going to go ahead and take out all their adversaries in the Middle East. And if you look at it now, you look back at the clean break memo that was written back in the 90s by, Jewish neocons who were U.S. citizens for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. All those countries that were mentioned in the clean break memo, we've either destabilized or paid off, right? Jordan and Egypt are cucked. We pay them a lot of money to play nice with Israel. Other countries, we've toppled their governments or done some type of operation or coup. And all that's left now is Iran. And that's who we're currently negotiating with now. And I think we're in a very sensitive time where if we don't negotiate these, if we don't go through this properly, we can find ourselves in a World War III. And we're going to win, obviously. Iran can't stand up to us, but it's going to be very costly and very painful for us economically, right? Iran is in a very strategic position where they can really hurt us economically, whether it's, their missile system, which is very advanced, their air defense, which is very advanced, their drone program. They absolutely have, all of our allies, Saudi Arabia, UAE, et cetera. They can destroy their oil fields and their strategic points. We could see gas prices go up to like $11 if we go to war. Just off of that alone, they'd shut down the Strait of Hormuz. So there's some really serious consequences of us going to war with Iran. But that's what Israel wants. They want us to go in there and, knock out their nuclear capabilities. So,
and then I want to let some people ask more questions, but one quick question on women.
Sure.
So when it comes to dating, I'm 22. I ascribe to the notion that I think you should make yourself as a man before you maybe find your wife, like put yourself in a good position. Sure. But there's also the fact that like once I get to that position, I want to understand kind of women and the language of like women. So I'm dating now as well to kind of learn that.
Yeah.
Would you recommend doing that? Like, how do you balance that as you're kind of going along your purpose? Because I don't want to waste my time.
Yeah, there's different ways to go about it. I mean, like for me, I would go like, 6-8 months just grinding, right? Not talking to women at all, just working. And then I'd take like a month off and I'd, go hang out with friends. Because I was able to kind of do this because I was living in Texas at the time, down like on the southwest border. So I'd go back home and hang out with my friends for like a couple of weeks. And, I'd be more social and stuff like that. Then obviously I'd, turn that off and go back into grind mode. You could do it that way. The thing is that you just got to prioritize work. And I know that's where it kind of becomes difficult to be disciplined. That's why maybe taking 3-6 months where you're just grinding and then maybe taking a week or two where, you become social again. That's one way to go about it. But it really comes down to your preferences of what you want to do. But I think the big thing is just to not commit or get married before you have certain things in place. Right. So, use it as a time to kind of experiment and figure out women and figure out what you like and what you don't like. Yeah. Because that's half the game in itself. We had one guy try to like come in and heckle me and say, oh, well, I took your advice and I found my wife. So, but I was in a dark place because I was like womanizing. I was like, well, the reality is like half the game is figuring out the women that you don't want to be with. Yeah. So that's super important. So yeah, man.
Yeah. It's just hard to find that balance between like grinding, but also spending time with that. And I don't want to waste my time, but it's also important to learn. So. But for sure. That makes sense. So.
And also another big thing is, I tell guys all the time, I know it's hard for younger guys to do, but stay away from drugs and alcohol, man. That is the devil.
Yeah, I don't drink.
Perfect.
So,
good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, sweet. Well, thank you.
No worries, man.